I myself, the producer of this podcast, is not eligible to diagnose anyone with a mental health disorder. This podcast is purely for artists discussing the mental health hurdles they struggle with on a daily basis. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Where Is My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm your host, Christopher Orangeo, and today we have another artist on. If you've heard previous episodes before, I have posted this podcast idea and the topics on Facebook, and people have reached out to me, and through that process I've said, first, thank you for reaching out, and please pick your topic. So I have filmmaker, actor, I'm learning more about him, Renaissance man over here, Patrick Devaney. What's going on, man? How are you today?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. It's nice to officially meet you. We know a handful of people in the tri-state area film circuit. You've said that you are a filmmaker, actor, but also you run a festival. So that's kind of how I feel like you would know literally everyone, so I appreciate you kind of reaching out a few months ago and wanting to talk about this, and being so open to, obviously the rescheduling and meeting and this way and that way. And one of the topics we're talking about today is imposter syndrome. And I would just like to ask what drew you to this specific topic, wanting to talk about this, because I'm kind of mesmerized, I'll say, that people pick this topic to talk about. So why did you want to talk about this one?
Well, I think a lot of us suffer from this. A lot of us, I think when you grow up and you see, like, all the movie stars and all the actors and musicians that you see, they seem so larger than life, and they don't seem like they could be someone possibly near you or around you, or it could even be you. And that kind of like promotes itself throughout everybody. When I first started out, I mean, I saw other people doing independent films and independent TV, and I said, I think I know enough people. I think I can do this too. And without fail, just like so many people experience, the first thing that we get back is, you can't do that. You're not trained to do that. You're not a star. What, you think you're a movie star now? Like that kind of nonsense. And it's like, no, I really don't, and I still don't. And I said, but it doesn't mean I can't do something. It doesn't mean I can't
Yeah.
start something. It's almost as if like there's a hand that decides who's famous and who isn't, and who has ability and who doesn't. And then if you break that idea, then somehow you're a fraud, you're a fake. And we're told this from day one, and it's just so, it permeates everything. There's so many people I know, and if you don't have it, it's almost like it's weird. Like it's almost like you're being egotistical if you don't have it.
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good point. I think there's this whole sense of, and I don't know if you feel this way. This is honestly how I feel, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I feel like you need this in the arts. There's days I think I am the, because I write, direct, act. I think I am the best independent artist in New Jersey right now. Like there's days I feel that way, right? I'm on a fucking high, but it does quickly come down to be like, man, maybe I'm not. Like maybe I'm just not shit. Like I haven't been able to write anything lately. Acting, is the last thing I got into, but the most I've been like I'm in love with acting. But I haven't, I didn't go to like Juilliard. I didn't, take any classes at, at any prestige schools or anything like that. So am I a fraud? Like, so yeah, I feel that way a lot. And I think that's funny that you say that. Like, if you don't feel that way, you're immediately an asshole, instead of like, no, that person's just really confident and maybe we should take a page or two out of that person's book, you know? So in your own words, what's your interpretation of imposter syndrome?
um, and it's basically just a feeling that you're just not worthy of success, and you're not worthy of what you are seeing around you. As if somehow you're not trained, like you said, like, you didn't go to school for this, or you didn't go to the top thing. And I think we're just so programmed into thinking that way. Like, you want to do something. Where did you go to school for that? It's like, I didn't. What book did you read about that? Well, I
I
didn't.
didn't. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't. And it's instantly just dismissed. And even like, when it's just so hard. I think it ties into a lot of things. It ties into insecurity. It ties into peer pressure. It ties into jealousy from others. It
Mhm.
ties into our own views of self worth. If we're suffering something like, this is, we talk about this too. I mean, like, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression and a number of different mental dysfunctions, and I've had them all my life, and only recently, in my later in life, done something about it and even recognized what these things were, and that all ties into it. I started out as a musician when I was still in high school. I was playing nightclubs in Manhattan, and and the idea that I'm on these stages where like my favorite rock stars were also performing. I remember being 17 years old, 18 years old, playing the CBGBs, thinking I can't possibly be on the stage, and
Really?
it was, and we did a great job, and I still couldn't feel it because I still there was this still thing like I'm not that important, and how sad is that, But
Yeah,
I'm
no,
thinking
that's
the first time the Ramones got on the damn stage, they were thinking the same thing, you know.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that they were thinking, yeah, that they were like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And that's not, it's really, it's funny that like a lot of people feel that way, and it's only until, not to get too serious, but it's not until like artists leave this world, whether suicide or whatnot, where you're like, wow, like how loved they were, and that's on a grander scale, but even like on a smaller scale, like the independent world we're on, like, I don't think it's really talked about enough. Because we're all trying to make it. Like, I don't want to speak for you. I have a 9 to 5 job, and I'm working in the arts full time. Some people are just doing freelance, which is a fuck ton harder in my opinion, because there's no safety net of a biweekly paycheck. Um, and I just don't think there's enough credit given to us trying to make a dream a reality, and some sort of thing. And yeah, when you come across X, Y, and Z, and you come across social media, or you come across someone you may know doing, constantly working, you're like, well, why am I not, why am I not getting paid, or why am I not paid, but why am I not getting asked to work on stuff too?
That can tie into it too. I think earlier on in my life, I experienced that a little bit too. Like, why is it happening for them and not for me? That's kind of changed around. When we first started doing film work in about 14, 15 years ago, I started seeing things that I didn't like in the music world when I was younger. These different camps. Like, you had a band, that was your thing, and you couldn't be friends with this guy or that guy, and you couldn't work with this people or screw those people. And I remember seeing that a little bit in the indie world. And the people I was working with, we made a decision. We said, listen, we're not going to do that. This is changing. I'm not going to be a part of this again. And we're going to find people we can work with and enjoy ourselves with and promote them, and they promote us. So when one of us succeeds, it's a good thing. We're not in competition. And that
mhm,
took a long time. And I had to get my head wrapped around that and other people's heads wrapped around that. But it came about. I'll give you a perfect example. Like, years ago, I ran into Manny Serrano and Lindsay Serrano before they were even married, and they were just starting out. We had Zombie Hunters on TV. They had seen us on TV, and they're like, "Hey, you're just like us," and that we kind of resparked what they were doing. And this past weekend, they just did New Jersey Horror Con. They won Best Feature and Best Directors.
Yeah, they're awesome. I've seen them at festivals. They are awesome people.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. I'm actually the guy that married them. So,
You officiated their wedding?
yeah,
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's awesome.
beautiful ceremony.
Yeah, because I feel like they're like, I saw them years ago, at 4 or 5 years ago, at festivals, and I was like, this is a fucking power couple right here. So I think that's funny that you were like, nah, I'm gonna marry him, and I think that's
No, it was just so cool. And that's the thing. Like I couldn't. There's no competition there. I
yeah,
couldn't be happier for them. But I know that they experience this too. We've talked about this. I experienced it too. No matter what we do, when we were years ago, we were very involved with the Macabre Fair, and that was like our home base. And we were there from the very first one of those. And Elsie, may she rest in peace. She killed on that thing, and now her husband Adam is carrying it on down in Nashville. And we would go and we'd kill there, and people would love our work. And there was always still that tingling that was like, yeah, but there's so many other people here, there's so much better. And why am I being singled out and win something? And it's like, why can't I just enjoy this moment? And I
Mhm.
did. But I know there was always that thing saying, you know what, man, you're not the most talented guy here, you're not this, you're not that. And why are you why are you up here? And that's depression, that's anxiety, that's a lot of different things, and just self-worth, and it all comes into that. And I think artists just feel things on a deeper level to begin with. It's how you create shit.
That's what I was going to ask. The next question: why do you think people, mainly artists, fall under the under imposter syndrome? Do you think it's because we wear our hearts on our sleeves? Whether you're writer, actor, director, it's all about connection and understanding people and understanding emotion. So, is it because you know? Why do you think that? I think it's because this is one job, and if there's other jobs, please correct me, please like, let me know, because I think art is one job that you're constantly under a microscope, right? Especially with how the internet has just evolved even over the last 10, 15 years. um with like being able to put a short film on there and someone from fucking Zimbabwe talking shit that they don't like, or that they love it. So to you, why do you think artists fall under the term, or the yeah, I guess you call it a term now at this point, is the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think it's because in order to be open and honest about what you create, you have to keep yourself open. You have to open up your heart. You have to be vulnerable in front of people. One of my favorite directors, Jeremiah Kipp, he always describes the people that he loved to work with. He'll always say, this guy is fearless. This woman shows no fear. She doesn't hold back. And it's like he mentions it because it's not always easy to do. It's not something that's easy to do, but you completely expose yourself and open yourself to a role, or open yourself and say, this is the thing that I wrote, or this is the music that I produced, or this is the painting I have done, and expose yourself to it. You open yourself, and it's a static thing. And now it's to judgment of the world. Like dentists don't go through this. They're vital and they're important and they're artists in their own right, but they don't go through this. It's not like someone like looks in someone else's mouth and says, I don't know about that. It's that kind of
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah, no one's doing a rough cut of how dentists should be yeah, I'm saying, like, yeah, so we're gonna do a rough cut of your gums, and then we'll just give me some notes and we'll do a final cut. No, like, that's funny.
It's like, and also like in performing arts, there's the consistency to constantly be that. I forget who I heard say this. It was like, you're a musician, you're expected to sound the way and play the way you did 40 years ago after the 35,000th time you've done this song. But no one ever saw Starry Night and said, "Hey, Vincent, can you paint that shit for me again?"
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, yeah, that's a great point, actually. Yeah, there's all these different types of art where it's like, I'm not a painter by any means, but yeah, like if you're like in that groove of painting something and it's a one-time painting, yeah, there's digital versions of it now. But yeah, like, if you're a band, like you say, like the Rolling Stones, who have been on tour since, I don't know, the fucking dawn of time, um and if they're gonna have to sound exactly the same each time, that's impossible. You get older, and yeah, exactly, but like you get older, and maybe a song means something different. This song means something different to you when you're older versus when you wrote it when you were younger, and it's just going to sound different. And this is how I try to relate to it, is that I'm a big sports guy, and I am really big into art and movies particularly. And you know especially with sports, let's say, like, if someone's having an off day, like, no one's ever questioning, like, they're having an off day. You're making my team lose. Like, fuck you. It's like, well, this guy is going through stuff that you probably don't even know about. Like I think like just realizing that like everyone is just a human being. I think that kind of will help you kind of understand everyone. So like you mentioned earlier, you go to a festival and everyone could be, the guy could be like chest out, puffed out, blah blah blah, like I'm the shit, nothing bothers me, and everyone's like, fuck that egomaniac. You don't know, that could have taken that guy years to just like be who he was, be who he felt like he was, so I just wish there was a more understanding in the world, but like beggars can't be choosers, right? But just with arts, I just wish there was more of an understanding of like we're all kind of on the same team. Like, can we just kind of be teammates?
Yeah, I mean that's what we tried to do. I mean, like, it's everyone's different view and different kinds of films, and just working with other people is just having like a level of respect. I think that with encouragement, from your peers, that definitely helps feeling like you don't deserve this. And if you get kind of recognition from someone who's more successful, or like someone you even grew up watching, that kind of thing, it's like, it helps it a lot. But it's amazing that so many of us can't. It's either the extreme, I'm the best, I'm a go-getter, I'm this or I'm that, or I'm worthless. Like, that middle ground just seems to be like where you would think that most people would just thrive in, but none of us can really get to it that often, and that just sucks. Like, I don't know what that's about, but even though when you look at how many people that we grew up with, loving and watching, and they think they have it all, and then, like you said, like, they destroy themselves, and then they're gone.
Yeah, like what is it? When this was recorded a few weeks ago, Jim Carrey said that he's retiring from acting. So it might have been, by the time this comes out, he may be back on another Sonic movie or whatever. But at the time of this recording, he said that he's retiring, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, no! Why? Why?" And he's like, "I've done all I can do. I'm very happy with what I've accomplished." How many times do we hear that from anyone? Rare. And like he's so comfortable with who he is, or maybe he's not. People say, "Oh, he's not." But like, to be like, "Hey, unless there's a script that comes across my desk that I feel moved to do that's going to change someone's life, then I'll do it." Like, he doesn't feel the need to do stuff anymore, and that doesn't mean he's not going to. He may direct. He may write. He may do other artistic endeavors, much like how Tarantino said, "I'm done doing movies for now, but I'll do podcasts. I'll do." You just don't know. You don't know what the heart of an artist is drawing towards. Like I direct and I write, and then I love acting, and now I'm doing this podcast. You yourself, you're a filmmaker, actor, and you're like, and you run a festival. You just don't know where an artist's mind and their heart's going to take them. you know um and go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, and the idea to constantly be producing, and then constantly also being static, and also constantly having to do new things within that little framework. When people, it gets you for a certain long time. I mean, I started out in horror, and I switched over to sci-fi in 2014. I haven't looked back, and it's like I'm still, and kind of involved in horror on the periphery, and I'm still doing small things, but my
Yeah.
own writing and stuff has completely changed, and
What shifted that? Why did you shift that way?
I think that there are a lot of people doing horror. My first love was sci-fi. I got
Okay.
into I mean, I grew up, when Star Wars first came out, and Space 1999 and UFO and these kinds of things, and I just loved that. And I got into horror a little bit later on, and I just think there's so many people that are doing such fantastic work in horror, but I wasn't seeing indie work being done in sci-fi, and I was like, well, why aren't we not seeing that? And I did my first sci-fi film, and I said, wait a minute, this feels so much better. It just feels right. And I said, well, let me see if I can keep writing this way, and I just haven't stopped since. So everything I've done to that point, most of what I've produced, and all of what I've written is all science fiction. And I just love it, but it felt natural. Like you're saying, like, Jim Carrey said, like, I don't, I feel this is the natural path for me. It's like I felt that was just, it was just inside, to not do it that way would to be going against my instincts. And I think that but it's a lot of people are afraid to do that, because especially if they talk about imposter syndrome, if they get over that, and they get known for this one thing, well, how am I going to get renowned for a new thing? And then am I good enough for that now? So now you're dealing with
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think imposter syndrome falls under a lot of um things, not just, I'm obviously asking from an artist perspective. I think, am I a good son, father, you know, spouse, friend, I think all of those things play a factor into it, or you may not feel like, oh, if you were married or you, like I said, you're dating someone, or as a friend, you're like, am I like a fraudulent friend because I haven't heard from anyone, like I haven't told them yet. Like you can feel like an imposter syndrome for most things in your life, but I think it does come a lot with art because right now, especially in 2022, um, art is kind of like, I don't want to say anyone can do it. I personally, I have strong feelings about it. I don't think anyone can do it, right? Anyone is anyone can start and try to do it, but I would like to know the research of like 6 months to a year down the road, how many people have stuck it out, But I think people think like, oh, I'm gonna get an Instagram, put a camera emoji in my bio, get a few people to take photos of me, and now I'm a photographer, now I'm an actor, now I'm this, versus people like you know who are real artists, like such as you and I, and other people that we know who are out there making art, not flaunting it, and we're still like, what the fuck's wrong with me? Like it baffles me that you go through it, and you run a pretty successful festival or like you've worked on a lot of different projects, like and like I said, I this is my first time meeting you, so I'm not saying it just to say it. I just it because I'm just now starting to know the ins and outs of a festival, and it's a lot of fucking work. So it kind of baffles me that you say that you feel this way when you have a job where you're bringing so much joy to people's lives about showcasing their work.
Yeah, I thank you, man. I agree. I love it. And doing a festival is a lot of hard work. I run this with my friend and DP Mark Boutros. Who's like the primary guy that he started the festival. And he brought me on. Now we're partners in it. But it's like he's the creative force starting from the beginning.
Mhm.
And this is a guy who is twice Emmy nominated, and for different work in documentaries. And he's still like, oh yeah, he kind of like plays it off. I'm just like, you're an Emmy nominated guy, dude. You're awesome, you know.
Yeah.
And he'll just play it off because it's just like like his priority are his work, his wife, and his daughter. So he's like that. Those are the things in my life that are my priorities. And he doesn't brag about anything, even though he could. And I think that's kind of like it's hard to find the balance of what if we're talking about ourselves in a positive way, or if we feel like we're bragging about something, because we're also raised, don't be a bragger.
Yeah.
It's hard to just talk about yourself, like like, oh, I accomplished this, I accomplished that, and inside not feel it, but then you have to do it, especially if you're in front of a camera, and then having to try to live that, and is that really what you're feeling inside? It's there's so many different emotions, but I honestly don't think that if you didn't have those things, I don't know if it would really work. I forget who it was said. He said you used to get stage fright, and they're like, listen, if you're a performer, the day you don't get stage fright is the day you should quit, because then it doesn't matter to you anymore.
That's actually pretty interesting that you said that, because um, the person I just interviewed before you, she said the same thing. Like we were talking about the same thing. Like I think that just comes from the same cloth of being an artist, of like the day that you stop having fun, or the day that it doesn't fucking move you, or the day you find it as a job versus like, yeah, it's a job, but it's like I love going to set, then that's a real problem. Like that's a real problem. And I 1,000% agree. I feel like the day I feel like going to set is like, oh, I got to go to this set, I got to do this again. I think that's a big problem. But was there, and like, how have you handled or you managed your in you in be feeling like you're an imposter here? Like, has there been any trip? I'm sorry, I can't speak. Tricks or tips that you tell yourself, or that maybe others have helped you along the way with, or is it, have you always felt this way? Has it new, or has it kind of disappeared? Like, was it something when you first started? Like, I would love to hear like kind of like your thoughts on why you feel this way. Cause like I said, I'm after like reading your bio a little and been talking to you, I'm like, this dude runs a festival. Like, what's going on? Like I don't get it. I really don't understand it.
I can't say that I've ever gotten past it. I've learned to deal with it in certain ways. It was much harder when I was first starting because we were all unproven. Especially like, I mean, the first thing we did it for public access cable. So we were not only just showing this at festivals, we were actually on TV,
That's
like
why. Yeah.
weekly. Like people could go, every week and see us. And I started getting email from people left and right, pros and cons, and a lot of cons because we were just starting out, But even if
Yeah.
I mean, you can make the most spectacular thing in the world, and you're going to have thousands of people, you know, putting you down online and shit. But I don't think you ever really get over it. I think after over time, you have to come to a level where you say, I've accomplished a lot of things, right? I'm going to accomplish more. Um, Nobody is ever, really going to be the best at what they do or the top what they do. And even if they are, it's only for a moment. And one of the things I said in other interviews, but it's always helped me. Um, when they were giving Akira Kurosawa lifetime achievement award,
Yeah.
right? And the presenters were George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and this is years ago, and they gave him this lifetime achievement award. And without him, neither of those men have a career because there's no Star Wars, there's no Indy, there's no anything, right? And he stood at the stage and he said, and he was like 90 at the time. He said, I thank you for this award, but I accept it grudgingly because I don't feel like I've yet mastered my craft.
That's insane.
And Lucas is like, and he didn't say it to be a dick. He was being
No,
serious.
yeah.
He's like, because I could live to be 400. I'm still learning. He's like, I'm still learning this process, and that mentality really helped me because I was like, if he's still learning, we're all still learning, and there isn't anyone that stops learning it. So no matter what you do tomorrow, you're going to do something better if you learn from it. If you haven't learned from it, you ain't got shit. But if you've learned from it, you can move forward with it. And after a while, for me, that helps it, but it doesn't cure it. It's not a placebo. It's like a band-aid, but it doesn't fix it. I'm always going to feel, like I've accepted that. I've always wanted to feel like, how did I get, noticed? How did I even get this done? How did I get that done? The first thing we tried was Zombie Hunters, and that got national distribution after a couple of years, untouched, like as
It's
is from
nuts.
public access. Like, and I mean, this was years ago, and I'm still bugging out, like, how the hell did that happen? Right? But it did, and we should enjoy it. And it's just tough to do, but you have to just accept it. Like, you're always going to learn no matter what this is. Every single person that you see maybe seen above you, or who are the real people, or the go-getters and the movers and shakers, they're all learning too. So we're all kind of in the same boat. We're just in different like parts of it.
Yeah. No. That's a great answer because I mean, I don't know about you, but there's a point where it's like there has to be a point in my career where I'm like I feel satisfied enough to be like, all right, I've accomplished a lot. I will still learn, but I've accomplished versus being like I'm gonna like I want to be fueled by like passion, not fueled by like having to prove people wrong, if that makes sense. Now I definitely have a chip on my shoulder with certain things, and that's always a negative connotation toward it. I just want, I think it's scenarios I make up in my head for sure, where people think like, oh, you're a big, I'm 6'1", I'm a big dude, I'm almost 300 pounds, and I'm just tall and I'm Italian. No, so you got to be like Goomba number 3 in the background, where I'm like, or like, oh, you're just funny, right? Like I want to be able to prove to people that like I can do a bunch of different stuff. So like I said, there's that, that unhealthy obsession of wanting to prove people wrong, but I think that's what kind of drives me, right? But you got to be able to distinguish the two of like, being driven by ego and like anger or negative or hate, and versus like, okay, I'm gonna be driven by like wanting to do stuff for me and me alone. But it's a tough industry in general. Not just trying to make it, but just trying to like also mentally talk about like, are you strong enough for it? You know? And I think if people are still, how long have you been a filmmaker for?
We started in late 2005.
Okay, so 17 years.
Going, yeah, like I said, we just finished 16 years of this. Yeah, so
And were you doing anything prior to that, or did you have another job? Or
to that, I was a musician until
Okay. So,
until I was maybe like 19, 20. I everything collapsed from there. I was doing electrical renovations. I worked for a media company for 10 years. And then out of the friggin' blue, just by happenstance, that's a whole other, man, we have a whole other podcast on this and the details involved in that. I became an accountant for the Archdiocese of New York.
oh shit.
So I went from 12 years of serving Catholic school to taking a very long break away from those people and then going right back into counting their money for 7 years. And that was a very strange trip. During that time, I realized that this is not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do this forever. I certainly didn't want to do this for the church. And I started seeing so many people doing independent television, like the guys from Gula Gogo and Drinking with Bob, and Jen Valdez had a show. You'll come across her if you haven't met her. You'll come across her, Jennifer Valdez, who did a show called Brain Eaters. And I'm just like, these people are out there. She was only in college then. She was in St. John's doing this thing. And I'm like, these people are out there doing Vinny from Sci-Fi Ninja Theater, all these guys doing this forever. And I'm like, I can do this. I know I can at least try to do this. And and there was never a Night of the Living Dead TV show. And Romero zombies were never on television. I always thought it was a crime. So I said, screw it, guys. If we can pull this off, we're gonna do it. We're gonna put zombies on TV. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we did. And it was just, this crazy thing. But after that, I was like, no, I know that this is what I want to do. And I still do accounting. I still do. I'm a paid writer now. I do all kinds of things, but just on it's all freelance. Like I said before, it's all freelance, and I can make my own hours. I can do my own things. I'll pick up work really wherever. I also work at the Union Square Farmers Market sometimes. So it's like it's a cool weekend gig, and I can do other things during the week. And it's like away from the corporate accounting thing, and which I did very hardcore for a long time, I know I want to do this. So trying to find a balance in that has also been difficult too, because then it's like, well, yeah, you're that accountant guy that does movies. You're that musician that does movies. It's like, no, I'm the filmmaker who also does accounting. There's a difference,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that mentality, that mental, but yeah.
yeah, no, it's a different between, because like I used to really like, like I said, I'm 34, so about like 7 to 10 years ago, I used to be like, if I am not a actively working filmmaker, then I haven't made it. And then I started like kind of doing more. I tried anyway doing the freelance world, and that was a little like that wasn't for me, like at all. So I'm like, yeah, maybe a job and doing film wouldn't be a bad thing. And I've been able to balance it out really well. And I think if you just don't put so much pressure on you to make it like right away and realize like this is really a waiting game, right? And it is a big waiting game. I think when you have certain realizations, I like to call it realizations. I don't feel like it's like, oh, I've given up and it is what it is. I feel like no, like any moment something good can happen to me. I'm just tired of waiting. I'm personally just tired of waiting. That's just me being impatient. So there's days I get really tired, and there's other days where I'm like, you know what, like everyone's path is a lot different. And I try not to think like, oh, I don't belong here, but there are times I feel like I really don't like belong in the industry. I feel like a fraud, and I'm like, someone's about to, I guess, what is it? Take the mask off like Scooby does and reveal who I am, kind of thing.
I completely relate to that too, and like I said, I can tell you right now, of all the people I work with, all the people I know, all the stuff, only 4 of them are working in the industry full time. 4 people,
That's nuts.
and that's just how that is, right? It used to be 5 or 6, now it's 4, but even then, it was never more than 10. I mean, at my peak, it was never more than 10. And they're not, and these are, and most of them are actors, and they're not all working in front of the camera. You know, a lot of people I know get one or two really shining spots in a film or television, and the rest of the time they're behind the camera. You know, they're associate producers, they're assistant directors, they're all kind of BPAs, everything. You know,
Yeah.
but I know what you mean about pulling that mask back and shit, because even like you say, you're 34. I didn't start until I was 35. You know, so I'm 53 right now, and I didn't even start until I was older than you. So it's like I started thinking, when I started getting known, I'm already 40 years old, and I'm just like, all the people I looked up to, like, they were, most of them were like dead by 27. So it's like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
I always feel like I have an added thing of like, I may feel like, well, you're too old to do this now, you know like I mean, I've experienced that. I've done a lot of background work. I was doing regular stuff. I was a regular guard on a court officer on Law and Order for years. I mean, that kind of thing. When I hit 50, all of a sudden things just changed and I stopped getting work. Like the week after I turned 50, all of a sudden so many jobs just vanished because there's an algorithm that puts you at a different place. And then maybe like 10 years from now, I'm going to get a lot of like, senior Republican senator jobs and shit like that. But it does happen. So it's kind of like my age also played a part in that, because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I didn't make it when I was 20. I'm in my 50s and I'm still trying to do it. And I don't even know what making it means anymore. But,
Yeah, it's all subjective. Yeah, yeah. I mean, a part of me is just like, do I stop making short films and just focus on writing and try and sell it and this and that, or do I like, because I love acting and I really fell in love with it, like, do I just keep like writing stuff, acting in it, producing it, filming it with my friends? Like, I see a lot of my friends still just like still doing stuff, like still just continued, especially through COVID. I didn't get a chance. I through COVID, I didn't do much, unfortunately, because I had health issues too. But like, all right, how am I going to get back on this horse that I used to be on all the time? And I think doing something like this podcast is helping me out a little bit. But yeah, I felt extremely like, COVID hit. I had health issues. I wasn't on set. I saw people on set. I'm like, am I like a fucking fraud for like not, being on set while everyone else is filming stuff? You know, because it's like people still pressed on, like with masks and set mandates and this and that. Like, what am I waiting for, kind of thing? And I think social media plays into it. I know you're saying you're in your 50s, and I know you didn't grow up with it. I know you have it now, obviously, and I'm not trying to. Not being ageist at all. I envy people who didn't grow up with this shit, to be honest with you, because, and I would love for you to speak on it, for someone who grew up, having to be face to face with people, which is a blessing and a curse sometimes. But do you feel there's any, do you get imposter syndrome from what you see on social media, or are you just kind of like, this shit ain't real? I've been through a lot worse than some social media bullshit, like, or do you think, or does it feed into your imposter syndrome sometimes?
I can give you a perfect example of this, and she's gonna yell at me, but my creative partner, Lauren Clover, she's been a part of my life for about 9 years now, and we've been creative partners for 8 of those years, and we write together, we produce together, we act together. Everything I make, I send to her. With rare exception, I'm like, pick the role you want, that kind of thing. And we realized that when I was starting college, she was busy being born. So we have a 17-year age gap.
Wow. Okay.
It is funny and it's interesting, but she produces. The only reason I know anything about TikTok is because she produces fantasy threads, the videos for those, and it's ongoing interactive TikTok videos, and she's pretty well known in it. And she would show me these things, and I'm like, "What the hell are you producing? Like, I don't know anything about this," and it makes me feel kind of stupid. But at the same time, I'm just like, no, this is, if I'm gonna practice what I preach, I'm like, I'm gonna learn. So what are you doing? What the hell? Why are you transitioning into men and into insects and into monsters and shit? Like, what the hell is this? And then she would tell me it's all this interactive, really interesting shit. And it's
Yeah.
like, and it's tough for us too because she moved to Vermont. So it's like she's very far away from me now physically. So
Damn.
it's like that kind of stuff. We don't get a chance to really just like go at each other like in face to face.
Yeah.
But she's taught me a lot about that. So I know from her, from someone significantly younger than me, that kind of world. And it's like that's kind of cool. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
as far as
it's
like Instagrams, I don't know from Instagrams. I don't know from this. It's like I have to start learning better shit about that. But
Yeah, no, yeah. So I think it adds to it, in the sense of I think it adds to some having imposter syndrome because you see people constantly posting, constantly, and some people are posting like to really be like, hey, this is what like I accomplished this, I feel good about it, versus people posting to kind of like quote unquote stunt or brag or anything like that. I think personally, I would like to think I know the difference. I could spot the difference. And hopefully it's like, I'm not really about that. Has there been any times where, and have you overcome imposter syndrome, or do you still go through it a lot? And if you've overcome it, what was the secret to overcoming it? Are you comfortable like are you comfortable with like who you are as an artist, or are you kind of like having an identity crisis still? Or if you ever had one,
my self esteem issues are legendary. But
yeah, mine
um,
too, man. Mine too.
yeah, and was tied into massive amounts of drinking. I mean, I'm 6 years sober now, but it's like I was.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a degenerate recovering alcoholic, and have been since I was in high school.
Well,
And
congrats, man. I'm happy for you.
thank you. And that was only a sugarcoating over all the problems that I was facing and I'm not dealing with. And
Yeah.
that all comes from it. So I don't think I'll ever get over it. I don't think most people ever get over it. The main thing for me, honestly, is seeing so many different artists and people who have made things that I truly loved, and they feel the same way. And I
Hmm.
think it can be used. It can be used to your advantage. It can be used as a grounding, because it keeps you honest in a certain way. Like it's hard to acknowledge the things you created, but at the same time, it's harder to really love them and appreciate them on the level that your audience might, because you're still holding back. And I think that can kind of like help you work even harder. It can. I don't know. Everyone's different with it, but there are always moments of doubt. There's constant moments of doubt. Like why? I mean, auditions. I mean, Jesus, go on an audition, you don't get a role. I've auditioned for directors I personally know and I'm friends with, and they're like, "We found."
Yeah. Yeah, that's always tough. Like I've done that where I've held casting calls and some of my friends have gone out for it, and I kind of want to just be like, no, no, like nope, nope, and they're like, why? Well, why? I'm like, because I don't want it to ruin our friendship. So, I've tried go at this point. I try to do something where I write for specific people I know. I'll do that. But I've come across it where I've held auditions and some of my friends have gone it, and I'm like, nope, nope, and they're like, what, man, what? I was like, because if I say no, are you gonna be okay with it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like deep down they probably they'll be upset about it and they'll get over it. But yeah, no, I got that and kind of go.
No one's ever. I'll give you a perfect example. No, I mean, no one ever gets 100% over that.
No.
So it always sucks because you want to be able to. But I auditioned for a film that came out, and I knew the director. She's fantastic. I wanted to work for her for years. She
Hmm.
found someone that fit the role better, and I had to accept that. But a week later, after she told me that I didn't get the part, she was looking for a special effects artist, and I do a lot of sci-fi. So I said, "Listen, this is the guy you got to call." And I hooked her up with my special effects guy named Dave Geschman out of Philly, and I said, "Listen, I mean, I could have been like, well, you didn't pick me, and I'm not going to help you now." But it's like,
Yeah.
no, I believed in the story. I love what she does in general. I'm like, you guys should meet, and they did meet, and they worked together on this film, and the film looks beautiful. And I'm just like, so that's a positive that comes from it. So I'm like, I may not have gotten that, but I was still a little involved in it because I could have helped somebody, and that was good enough for me. It's like you have to like, what at what point is it good enough? But something I want to mention that what you said before about like having the
That's
chip on your shoulder. I think a lot of us have that, but I think it's important to try to like work away from that, because if the people you're thinking about, if you show them or you don't show them, you're still the same guy. it doesn't matter. Like they might leave you alone more, or they might, but that kind of like little thing, it's like that's not going to help you be a better artist. It's only going to, it's going to help exercise some demons maybe.
Yeah,
But ultimately they won't matter because they weren't there for you from the start, and they don't believe in you. So whether they do
exactly.
or don't, it does.
That's a great point, and I think, like I said earlier when I said it, like maybe it's just me making some shit up in my head. Um, yeah, I think it's just because it's like it's kind of like it's a weird analogy, and I'm just going on the fly with this, but it like how like in the Water Boy when he's like imagining certain people say certain things like bad about water, and they're like, dude, I didn't fucking say that, like that's kind of how I know it's a stupid analogy, but honestly that's how I feel it is. Like I'm playing these scenarios in my head. Oh, these people, they want to cast me with no lines, and I think that's where ego comes in, thinking like you're better than that when everyone has to start somewhere, and I send an acting reel to a casting director, and all of it is, I think it's the work from the last 3-4 years where I think I've really gotten better at my craft and acting. I send them my acting role, my acting reel, and I'm like, this is definitely going to get me something. Like, yeah, no, you could be doorman number 2 who has a few action lines, no dialogue, and it's not paid, but we'll feed you, we'll give you and there's times where I'm learning too, like we people have to say no versus like yes, like if you don't want to do it, you can say no. Like it's okay to say no in this industry. um but yeah, I think ego plays into it a lot, but if people cast me as X, Y, and Z, like if you think I'm only like goofy and funny because I'm a big dude, well, I'm gonna try and make something, or I'm gonna try and go out for something now that's gonna showcase my seriousness. But you're right. Like at the end of the day, like you are who you are, whether that person believes you or not, or even has any thoughts about you in general. Oh yeah. That's how it always is with people who I don't like the word because I'm not a teenager, but like haters or whatever. Like people who you think are your quote unquote haters. um they're not thinking about you at all. Like they're not worried about you at all, and you're sitting here stewing like, how am I going to get this motherfucker back on social media or in general, so it's yeah. um I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier about you know not, if you don't mind, about like going, you were saying like you're battling a lot of demons, and now you're sober, and I think a lot of people go to I know I've gone to substances, and I'm not even talking like harmful substances. I'm talking like, if I'm depressed, I overeat. I eat shitty food, or if I'm in a really depressed state of mind, like all I'm eating is fast food, and I could physically feel my body, like my face looks fuller, like I feel like shit. Um, if I'm depressed, I will like smoke. Um, I won't drink as much. I try not to go down all that stuff, but I try to, if I'm going through some like traumatic experience, like with family over the last few months, which I have, I'm trying to numb. I'm trying to numb it out or forget about it, and I don't think that's good. I would much rather try to tap into some art. So I say all that to, when you started your journey to sobriety, did you find any solace in art? Did you find it to be motivating, so to speak? And did you, write anything about it? Did you, were you in a role? Like, were you able to channel anything that you might have been going through in the beginning of your journey of sobriety to, like, did it gear towards art?
I it's hard to say. I mean, like if it was something, I think if it was something more sudden, then I probably would have. But this is something that I understood that I had and I was in complete denial of it. But I understood that I had
Okay.
a problem with it when I was like 17, 18 years old, and I understood that there was something wrong. And I didn't get sober until I was like 45, 46. But
So you were like almost 30 years with it.
oh
And
yeah, I started drinking.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I was drinking in 8th grade. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day by the time I was 15. I quit smoking in '93. I was smoking between 30 and 50 cigarettes a day. and whatever else happened to be around. I mean, anything short of shooting heroin, it's like if it was around me, I was fine, and we're all for everything. Um, and but my main thing was alcohol, constant alcohol. And there was, like you said, it's interesting you put it that way because that's exactly how I describe it. It was an idea to feel numb. It's like I wasn't looking for a party. I wasn't looking for euphoria. I was looking to feel numb. That's why
Yeah.
things like cocaine and like amphetamine and stuff, it didn't really do anything for me. But like Valium was like, and painkillers. I mean, I have a big problem with painkillers. Like it's like they made me feel instantly the way a half a bottle of vodka would feel. It takes me.
Yeah. Yeah. And were you still like during this time were you making art? And how is your art like in compared to like I guess when you sobered up and like do you ever watch like stuff like back to back and you're like you could definitely tell like
Oh
oh
man, I was going through
I
it.
don't know. I can't say if my acting's gotten any better because I can't see it myself. I try not to watch myself. I also can't see myself doing anything. When I see myself acting, even though people say that I
me too dude oh man you and I might be the same person. Yeah. Yeah, I can't watch something of mine and be like, wow, that's not Chris Orangeo. Like, that's not me. All I see is like me, if that makes sense. You know, like I don't see a character, and I think people around me are too nice to be like, yeah, no, I totally see that character. I totally see you're so different than that. But I've also had some of my best friends be like, dude, all I see is you, like with the humor like. I'm like, son of a bitch, man. Like I'm trying to separate that, but I'm very much like you, man. I don't see the good in any of the projects I do. I just see, okay, I didn't fuck up, so that's a win. You know, I got my lines right. That's a win, rather than focusing on like little character traits. If that makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
it makes perfect sense. I'm telling you, I go through all of that same shit and I do the same exact things. I mean, I was lucky enough to do an episode of Perfect Murder, and it was
Nice.
awesome. I loved it, and I'm watching it, and everyone's like, "You did a great job. We just saw you on TV." I'm just like, "You saw me sitting in a chair talking like me." I'm like, "No, no, it's a totally believable character." I'm like, "Yeah, because you fucking."
That's great. Yeah, yeah. You know me. Of course, you're gonna say that, and it's like we cannot take a compliment for the life of us. And I think that's it's. You know, I don't want to speak for you. It really does tie up to feeling like you don't belong and you're an imposter and or you're someone in and man, I'm not in I say I'm an artist, but am I really an artist? Like, can I name that genre of that genre or a movie of back in the 30s? So I can't do that, so I'm not shit. Like, like when people are like, do you know what quote that's from a movie? I'm like, honestly, dude, no. Like I know like most famous quotes, but like people can quote like some offhanded like movie. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that's from, and I'm part of me is like, do they think I'm a fraud because I don't know this weird ass fucking quote? My mind's on other shit, you know, like, and that's what it is. I feel like outside people, I don't want to say try and test you there again. I think that chip on my shoulder thing, but I think some people think like, oh, you don't know that quote? Oh, are you really a filmmaker? It's like that's not what a filmmaker is, but I appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think I don't. And, you could please speak on this too. Like as a creative, I feel like my mind's always racing, so I'm not strictly focusing on one set of like things when it comes to movies. Like my mind is always racing. Do you find that too? Like your mind's always going.
Oh yeah, all the time. I also suffer from something called I have an executive order dysfunction, which means like I can see 15 things I need to do in the next week, understand how to do all of them, and I cannot bring myself to physically start one. And that's just a mental dysfunction that I've gone through with therapy and things like that. I can be all over the place though. They say I have
Mhm.
ADD. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like that.
I think every artist has a form of ADD,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. If you do, I am sorry. That sucks. It's like that's just like, they put me on freaking Adderall, and I'm like literally watching like like birds hovering and like flying, and I'm seeing their wings, and I'm like, what the hell am I looking at here? Shit, hyper focused on nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Yeah, it's kind of I can be all over the place, and I try not to be. I try to focus on one thing. I try to finish, But I'll write a script, and I'll go inside and write some music, and then I'll go and start painting something, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have to go to the groceries, but now I'm still thinking about another thing I have to write, and like all of a sudden it's 3:30 in the morning, and I'm still typing. I'm like, I worked on three different things, and none of it makes any sense. Like, what the hell
Yeah.
here? So maybe something salvageable. Going back to what we said before, though, when you said that, asked me if I noticed a difference, sober or not. One thing just came to my mind. I can't see it in acting, but I know my writing's gotten much better.
Okay.
It's become more focused. It's become more structured properly, and
Clearer.
I think it delivers more of a punch. And people who have read my stuff from 10 years ago and read things I've written in the last 2 years, like I can see the appreciation that they have for other stuff, newer stuff, very much more. And I know because it's not produced yet. I know it's because I have clearer ideas from that, and it just that whole thing, like after a while, I feel like you're completely substance free for a year or two. 'Cause I don't do anything, and substance free for like a year or two, and all of a sudden it's like you start remembering things, you start being able to relate to things better, and it's just all the things you were afraid of doing. You're doing them, so now you're more
Yeah.
engaged. But also going back to um, imposter syndrome. I'll give you a perfect thing, and I almost don't want to say this because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm clearly not because I had no control of it. Um, I was picked up for a day, excuse me, to do background on Madam Secretary for a day. I've done that show a
Nice.
couple of times, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Taylor Leone is an absolute friggin' riot.
Is she?
Yeah, she's so much fun, and she's so cool, and she'll purposely try to make everyone around her laugh right before they say action, and then she can be, and everyone's trying not to laugh and shit. She's killer at
That's
that.
funny.
But this one episode was supposed to be her attending a county fair, and it was directed by Morgan Freeman. And I'm in
What?
scenes directed by Morgan Freeman. Like he would do group scenes, but then he would take a couple of us to the side and say, "Now this is what I want you to do. You stand over there, and you're going to come in this way, and you're going to give her this, and you're going to look at her this way." And I'm sitting there going, "How am I here? How the hell?" I mean, I
Yeah.
was a kid that grew up watching Electric Company. I know him as Easy Reader. I mean, it's like, how am I in a room with this man?
Yeah.
Let alone I'm working with Morgan Freeman. And he was so cool and so relaxed. And he's like, "I like the way that looked. We're moving on." And it was just,
And that's a guy. That's a guy who had a late career as well.
and
He,
exactly. I mean, I think what Brubaker came out when he was like, what, 42,
yeah,
41?
he
I
was
mean, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Yeah, like he started off a little bit later, so it's kind of like, it's kind of like, if you ever have those doubts, and then now you're being directed by someone who had a very late surge in his career. You're like, how can that not be inspiring? You know.
I felt that creeping in, like I shouldn't be here.
yeah.
Someone should be standing here. And then I started thinking, like, you know what? No, I have to see this. I have to do my job because this guy's sitting here doing his job, and there's no ego. Nobody was fawning all over him. He wasn't having that. None of that was going on. And him and Tia Leone were like the best of friends. They goofing around with each other and shit. I'm like, this is just work, and I'm here to work, and
Hmm.
this is awesome. Why don't I learn from this man? And I just watched him the whole day. I'm like, just how his mannerisms were and the calmness. And it
That's
was so
awesome.
cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It was just so much fun.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on tonight, and talking about this and having insight to it. Like I said, I didn't really know you beforehand and didn't meet you beforehand. I know we have a few mutual friends, but after hearing you talk, I feel like I don't want to say I don't want you to feel slighted or disrespected. I feel like we're cut from the same cloth as to why we think the same way. You've done a lot more than I have, but I feel like we are, like I said, we're cut from the same cloth as to why we feel certain ways and why we do certain ways. So like something like this, like, I'm hoping it can help anyone who's listening, like as it's helping me, as we're recording, because it's like, if someone like you or anyone else is feeling this way, then it's like I'm not alone, So I appreciate you coming on and helping me and helping people out, and I hope it was somewhat therapeutic for you to talk about this stuff.
100%, man. The only way you feel anything better about this is by talking about it, and you're gonna
Hmm.
not, which is just what you said, man. You're spot on. You're not alone, and you're significantly not alone.
Oh yeah, no, I'm learning that more, and it's a little upsetting that you're not alone, because you don't want to see some people you respect, and that I've met you, and I've obviously respect you, and it's like, man, why is everyone going through that? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, no, that's it's there's some comfort in that, So, um, once again, thank you for coming on, and everyone thank you for listening to my audience. I appreciate you. And for Where Is My Mind podcast, a podcast about mental health and the arts, this is Chris, and I'm out of here. Once again, this is Where Is My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm host and producer of the podcast, Christopher Orangeo. All episodes will be available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. Once again, this is Chris Orangeo, and thank you for supporting.